to 43, which I believe finishes up that chapter, but let me look and be sure. Have you started me up? Okay, thank you.
43, last one.
Yeah, okay, good deal. Chapter 5. Last week we talked about a divine appointment that Jesus had made when he crossed over the Sea of Galilee with his disciples and with a flotilla of other small boats that were following him. That happens to be mentioned in the scripture. Why, I'm not sure. And he went and saw a demon-possessed man. And we kind of concluded, and I think rightfully so, that Jesus had, as if he had had an appointment, a divine appointment, not to see the other people that were living there, but to see that one man, or in the case of Luke, there were two men, but however, we'll stick with the one man for now. He had an appointment with that one man. He had an appointment to free him from the bondage that he was under, because the bondage of these demons, when Jesus asked him who he was, what did he say? What did he say his name was? Do you remember?
Legion.
Legion's 6,000 fighting men, so maybe he had 6,000 demons. It doesn't matter. There were a lot of demons, and they had this guy naked. The people in the town tried to, living in the caves where they would bury people, and they had him chained up and so forth, but he broke the chains. Yeah, you got those many demons in you, no chain's going to stop you. So now Jesus returns in his boat, or probably it's Peter's boat, and they go back across the lake, or what's known as the Sea of Galilee, Gennesaret, either Lake Gennesaret, Lake Tiberias. The Romans had their own name for it. Guess named after Tiberias. So he goes across to the other side, and the moment that he said, and now this is a much more populated area, right? That area of Capernaum where Peter and Andrew and Peter's wife and so on were staying. He crosses over, and the moment that he sets foot, because you know, if you're looking for somebody and you know they're in a boat and you see a boat approaching, you're calling all your friends together. This might be him. This might be the right boat. This is who he's coming in. So when he pulls up onto shore and sets foot onto the land, he is surrounded by people. Many people wanted something from Jesus, and including two different women that are going to be described in this. I say woman because one of them is a 12-year-old daughter, but for the sake of telling this little story, there were two women that were going to be profoundly impacted in their life. They were going to be healed. One by faith, one her personal faith in the older woman, and one by the faith of the father for Jairus, the synagogue, one of the synagogue leaders. So, let's go to chapter 5. Chapter 5. Verses 21. Okay. Now when Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a great multitude gathered to him, and he was by the sea. So he was standing on the shore. Usually, well, this may seem obvious to you, his back is to the water. The people are gathering up, and in some, not necessarily in this case, but we've read before, that the crowds were so intrusive and so wanting to touch him and to hear him that they kept pushing him back, that he got into one of the fishing boats and went offshore a little bit so they couldn't get to him physically so that he could speak to them, because he had a lot of things that he wanted to tell them, right? So it doesn't mention any of that here, it just says that he's surrounded. And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name, or Jairus, I think it's Jairus by name. See, I never did do well in phonics. And when he saw him, meaning Jesus, when he saw him, he fell at his feet. So here's one of the heads of the synagogue. He sees Jesus. His faith already in Jesus' ability is so great that he's bowing down. He falls at the feet of Jesus. And he's got something really important to say to him. And verse 23, and he begged him earnestly, saying, my little daughter lies at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, that she may be healed and she will live. A lot of people have seen the healing of sick people, the healing of lame people. We've seen a lot of that. So Jairus is thinking, my daughter is sick. She's getting close to the point of death. I will go ask the teacher, sometimes he was called a teacher, ask Jesus, to come and lay hands on her. They were familiar. He's obviously Jewish. He's not a believer in Jesus as the Messiah, not yet. So the laying on of hands was kind of a normal thing. So laying hands on. We know from the past stories of the healings of Jesus that Jesus has healed somebody from a distance. When the Roman centurion came and said, my servant is sick, is, once again, close to death. And Jesus says, go your way, your faith has made it happen, right? Made it real. And then as he's riding back away, some of his servants or whatever came and met him kind of halfway and said, your son, I don't think it was your son. Your servant is healed. And he asked them, what time did this happen? Which was a great question to ask. And they said at the whatever hour it was of the day. And he realized that was the time that Jesus said,
go your way.
Go your way. In other words, I got this. I don't have to be there. Once again, everybody thinks, bring the healer to wherever the sick person is, and then they can lay hands on. Okay, so this is this part has two parts to this, and I thought about doing one and next week doing the other part, and then I realized how intertwined they are. So I really couldn't do that. So anyway, made it happen. So he begs him, lay your hands. So Jesus went with him. And a great multitude followed him and thronged him, meaning they were right.
Crowding all around.
Yes, a throng of people, right? A huge crowd. Okay, now we go into the second woman. Second female, I guess. Now a certain woman, verse 25, who had a flow of blood for 12 years. So I think this is delicately being said. She had a menstrual bleeding, and it never stopped. And it hasn't stopped for 12 years. And she had suffered many things from many physicians, because remember, you couldn't do blood tests, and you couldn't do, they didn't have the knowledge that we've got today. And a lot of the cures that they would give would be almost worse than what you had wrong with you. So, it's like drink this concoction or whatever that's supposed to help you. And not only that, but she had spent all that she had. She spent every dime that she had, and she wasn't getting better. She was actually getting worse. Now, what is a problem? Think about the Jewish religion, Judaism. A person who had this issue with blood, one of the things that would keep you out of the synagogue and out of the temple for sure is blood. So that's why the Jews weren't to eat the meat that still had the blood in it. They had to wait a certain amount of time before they could go back. And a woman during her period could not go. She had to wait until she was finished with the bleeding. Well, this woman had never finished. So she not only was that an issue, but the fact that she couldn't even go to the synagogue or go to the temple, she was banned from that because of something that she didn't even cause herself, right? So, verse 27. When she heard about Jesus, now it doesn't say when she heard that Jesus was in town or when she actually just heard for the first time what Jesus, that's a little hard to believe that she hadn't heard. Everybody knew about Jesus. But anyway, when she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd, and I think she was, and she touched his garment. I think in the crowd, she either weaseled her way in to get up to where she could reach out and just touch his garment, or she may have even been down on her hands and knees to get close. Wouldn't you do that to get healed if you had a similar situation? Yeah, you bet. And so that's what she did. Now, some of this after this is really, really interesting. Verse 28, for she said, if only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well. Because the clothes are touching his body. If the power is in his body, then it transfers through the clothes. You touch the clothes. So she, that was amazing in itself. Verse 29, immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up. The moment she touched him, she didn't have to say, I believe in you. Nothing. What was going on was her faith that Jesus, even if I touch his clothes, will heal me. Now, that doesn't, now today, there would be, and there are, people who are getting prayer cloths. If they had a piece of anything from somebody that was a heal, in other words, it can really go overboard, because we're talking about pure, simple faith. She's not even a Christian. She's a Jew, a Jewess, as they would call her. And she wanted to be healed so bad that she was willing, and of course Jesus is Jewish. And the stories that she had told prompted her to say, I'm not going to miss my chance to get healed. No one has been able to help me up till now. Okay, so, verse 30. And Jesus immediately, knowing in himself that power had gone out of him, he felt that's very bizarre. I don't know. But he knew, he probably didn't feel her touch him because she's touching his garment. But he knew when his power was going out of him into somebody. Okay. He turned around to the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?"
Amen.
But his disciples said to him, "You see the multitude thronging you or crowding around you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" That's not what he said. He said, "Who touched my clothes?" And he looked around to see her who had been doing this thing. But the woman, hearing and trembling, she's scared. She's scared. Maybe if he finds out it was me, the bleeding will come back. Because she knew immediately what had happened. I'm sure she knew immediately. She came and she fell down before him and told him the whole truth. She was real. She was full of faith. She put her fear aside and approached Jesus, not knowing. Because what were Jewish people used to when it came to the Jewish leaders? Were they kind and benevolent, always willing to help, always with a kind word? The reverse. They were arrogant. They thought they were smarter than the people. And they weren't approachable, certainly not like this. So not knowing, if she had known Jesus, she wouldn't have had that fear. But she didn't know him. But she's going to know him now, right? Verse 34. And he said to her, Jesus, "Daughter, your multicolored robe has made you well." Or, "Daughter, your genealogy, because of the fact that you're a Jew, has made you well." No. He said, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." Okay, now let's rewind a little bit. Your faith has made you well. When he felt the power going out of him, he could have said, "Oh, well, I guess somebody brushed up against my clothes, or but the power went out of me. I'm not sure what that's all about." But he searched her out, I believe, for a reason. If he had just said, "Well, she's been healed, and that's what she came for," we'll just continue on our way because Jairus' daughter is waiting, and we're getting sidetracked here. Or maybe that's what the apostles were thinking. I believe that he didn't want her to leave unless she knew what had made her well. And so when he says to her, "Daughter, your faith in me has made you well." That to me is and that's one point. And you notice at the end of this sentence it says, "Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." And yes, and be healed of your affliction. He wanted her to know this was not just a temporary fix. That in a week from now you're going to start bleeding again. Doctors try to eliminate the symptoms. When we go to a doctor today and you say, I've got this pain in my shoulder or in my arm or in my whatever. And so they try to see what's causing it, but in the end, what we want is relief from the pain. So they may tell you, okay, what have you been doing? Did you strain your muscle or your tendon or whatever? You weren't in an accident, right, where you got really hit hard and maybe something's broken. So once they've ruled all of that out, or they could take an x-ray and see if you'd broken something, whatever. But what they can do is limited, because in the end, all they can do is treat the symptom. Take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning, right? That's the standard thing we used to hear. And the bill will be in the mail. Well, they don't bill you in the mail anymore because people are too fraudulent. They don't do that anymore. He wanted her to know that he had solved the problem from the source. Deep inside of her, where nobody, and he doesn't go into detail about this, but we do know that he wanted her to know that she was healed permanently, because he had he didn't just put a poultice on there and say, okay, it'll be better, or it'll get a little better, or whatever. No, he said, it's done. It's over with. What I did to you, or for you, in healing you, is an inside job. I did it from within you. I took care of that problem. And so now we're back to Jairus' daughter. While he was still speaking, meaning Jesus, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house who said, your daughter is dead. I don't know that I would want that to be my message to have to give to somebody. Why trouble the teacher any further? 36. As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, it's on the board. What did he tell him?
Just believe.
Don't be afraid.
Just believe.
Just believe, or only believe. All he did was overhear what they were telling him, and don't bother the teacher anymore. In other words, this isn't something where he can go and perform a healing. This is so like the story of Lazarus. But Lord, if Lazarus is dying, why are we waiting 3 days to leave? And he said, he's not dead, he's sleeping. Oh, well, if he's sleeping, then he'll get better, and so I can understand why you're not in a hurry. No, that's not the reason why he wasn't in a hurry. And the same, you just watch the words, and it's kind of like deja vu. For 37, and he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, which was the inner circle. And James, of course, is the brother of John. Andrew's the brother of Peter, but he's not there. Then he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, verse 38, and saw a tumult. He saw a big commotion. And those who wept and wailed loudly. Just a little bit of Jewish culture. If somebody in your family has died, I don't mean that they're sick, but they've just died. You would hire professional mourners. It sounds weird.
It is weird, huh?
It is weird. In our eyes, it's weird. You hire. Okay, are you finished yet? And then we'll continue. You okay? Okay. So when the time came, and she had died, these professional mourners came in, and all they did was, beat their chests, and they may not even have known this girl, but they're professional criers. They were brought in to mourn for the person. Now, out of pure respect for the people that were left over, who were probably crying as well. So he hears this, all this wailing and weeping and all this stuff going on. He's brought his three of his disciples, and this is what he says, 39. When he came in, he said to them, "Why make this commotion and weep? The child is not," what? Dead, but sleeping. Sound familiar? And they ridiculed him. The NIV says they laughed at him. But that laughing would be short-lived.
Scornful and jeering.
Yeah. But when he had put them all outside, so he sent everybody, okay, all of you get outside except for Mom and Dad and my three witnesses. Not only witnesses, not just witnesses because the parents were witnesses, but also as a learning experience, right? He took the father and the mother of the child and those who were with him, and he entered where the child was lying. This is when a person dies at home and he's been under doctor's care, medical care, the doctor comes and says, "I've done everything I can do." In the old days, he would say, "It's in God's hands." They don't say that now. So he's done everything that he can do, and he walks away, and because the person's passed away. Jesus says, "Good thing. I came right at the right time. I know Jairus wanted me to come while your daughter was still alive, but I've got something more important for you to see." Because whether or not, we know from John's account that Jesus did a multitude of healings and teachings and parables, and he said there's so much of this that you couldn't even put it in a book. He did so much. So here he is, and he says, "All the rest of you get out, just let the parents be here. I am looking for the salvation of this mother and father." And quite honestly, I'm sure will get passed on to this 12-year-old girl. Because he didn't need to make this. He didn't want this to be a big show. He didn't want all those people in there. He wanted them. Because first of all, who was it that went and asked for help from Jesus? Jairus, the father. So now the father and the mother are in the same room with her dead child, and I'm sure, really, really, really tough situation. But when Jesus is there, there's nothing impossible, right? So he took the child by the hand and he said to her, "Talitha Kumi," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." The creator of the universe commands his creation to come back to life and to rise up. Immediately the girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age, and they were overcome with great amazement. how in the world? We wanted him to come and heal because we heard all these wonderful stories, and we may have even witnessed some of these stories where he's healed people. But now, if you're a healer, you're not necessarily the creator. But if you're the creator, you're also a healer. So there were probably plenty of people that considered themselves healers, professional healers. They might have wore little white coats and white pants and did it in front of crowds of people. Did you have something to add?
Well, the topic, I guess, is faith. Powerful tool.
Right?
And the Lord said, I gave you the measure of faith to everyone.
Right?
What we do with it is up to us.
Right.
But the Lord gave us that tool to move mountains.
Sure.
You need be.
Sure.
He said, all you need is faith the size of a mustard seed.
Right.
So faith is what moves us to do other things.
And that's very well put. And he also said, without faith it is impossible to please God.
Amen.
It's impossible to please him because you have to believe. When everything around you says, when all of the healers and mourners around you say she's dead, she ain't coming back to life, she's not asleep. But if your faith, people will say, I have faith. It's who do you have faith in? Not what do you have faith in. I have faith in my car that it's going to start because Gilbert worked on it. And I'm going to drive down the road and everything's going to be fine. So I have faith. I have faith that the car is going to do it. I also have faith in Gilbert for doing the work on the car. Okay? But this faith that's brought his daughter back to life is a faith in him, in Jesus. Now, they're amazed. It hasn't sunk in yet. Can you imagine that night when he's laying in bed with his wife and probably his eyes are like wide open. He can't go to sleep. He probably goes in and checks every 10 minutes to see whether his daughter is still okay. Because it goes against our human way of thinking that dead is dead and alive is alive. But when the Creator, and there's the difference, many people saw Jesus for what he appeared to on the surface to be, which was an itinerant preacher, meaning he traveled from place to place. He didn't really have a home to speak of. And he had this ability to heal. But bring somebody back to life? You've now crossed the line from being this great teacher and a healer into being something else. Who can bring somebody back to life? Only God controls the life and the death of a person. So that's what Jesus was doing. He was saying, he had this other divine appointment with this lady with the issue of blood. But he didn't go, hold that thought for a minute. I've got to go take care of this old girl before she dies. No. Deal with it, the woman with the issue of blood. Have her be healed. And then go back to where he was going to see the little girl. So immediately the girl got up, but he commanded them strictly that no one should know it. as a reader of this, I'm going, yeah, right. Like, they're going to be quiet about this? And said that something should be given to her to eat. I think not only, well, she's probably been sick for a while. So she's weak from not eating. So give her something to eat. A little broiled fish, a little bread, a little whatever. Give her something to eat.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that's who did it. It was Jesus. And so he finished doing what he was set out to do.
Amen.
And two people, and I was bringing up the fact that the father is probably laying in bed thinking, how did this happen? And milling this around, because what Jesus' words to him were simple. Don't be afraid, just believe. Just believe. And I think that the man probably said, like a lot of them have said, I do believe in you, or I want to believe in you, help me in my unbelief. Right? Yes, I want to believe. Help me get from the point where I really don't firmly believe yet to the point where I'm all on board with you.
All in. Yeah.
All in, that poker term. Let me see if I got something in here that... I'm sure that the story spread like wildfire.
Of course.
Because if he comes out, and even though they wouldn't have to say a word, right? All of a sudden this little girl
Yeah.
comes out of the house, and all of the mourners and all of the neighbors are going, I thought she was dead. And I think Jesus has a sense of humor. It's not recorded what he said, but I could hear him saying, but you said I said she was asleep. And you laughed. Evidently she was just asleep. Maybe, and they could either have faith in Jesus after seeing this, or they could say, maybe she really was just asleep. Heart stopped, no pulse, no breathing. Yeah, that's how we sleep. Not really. The father had to believe because he is lost. I mean, it doesn't say how many other children he had, but to lose your child would have been horrible. So this father had to believe that Jesus could bring her back to life. Like, are you missing? Are you? What do you call it? It's not going to hurt you any to believe, because if she's already dead, what is there to lose? But I think it went deeper than that. I think the father really believed. And by the way, the leader of the synagogue was an administrator. He took care of the business of the synagogue. He wasn't the religious leader or spiritual leader of the people. He was an administrator. He was a bean counter or whatever you want to call it. So for him to have faith that his daughter who was dead could now be brought back to life is an amazing thing.